Well, good morning. Can I start by thanking you, Mia, for your welcome to country? An incredibly impressive story, and we wish you all the very best in your ambitions to be a police officer in the state of South Australia. God knows we need more of them at the moment, so we're very grateful for your efforts. To Gemma, thank you for your opening remarks, but more than that, can I thank the whole team at News Corp, including Mark Ranke and others, for facilitating the Bush Summit. You identified in your opening remarks an absolute truth in that here in South Australia, we can be prone to be an Adelaide city-centric jurisdiction. Out of a state of 1.7 million people, 1.3 million of them live in Greater Metropolitan Adelaide. And the Bush Summit effort, that led by News Corp, is an important occasion for us to reflect and contemplate the role of regional South Australia and what it means to our state. Because the truth is, South Australia's regions have always been the economic powerhouse of our state. Always. From the copper seams that drove our early prosperity, to the agriculture that has kept our colony alive through droughts and recessions alike, to the bounty of our resource-rich centre and the world-class fisheries along our coast. It is true that our economic complexity is increasing in space, defence and high-tech and more, but resources and produce remain our state's largest export industries by some margin, not to mention the internationally renowned products of our world-class vineyards, such as those that are around us today. And while South Australia's regions were integral to our past economic strength, I believe they will be integral and pivotal for our future prosperity. There is a huge economic opportunity before us in resources, in agriculture, in mining, hospitality, aquaculture, in forestry, and in our national energy transition. Our mineral wealth, along with our unique combination of abundant renewables, means we are in a prime position to lead the world in green iron, in copper production, in hydrogen, a revolution that can bring with it tens of thousands of jobs and boost local regional economies alike. And it's not only the state government that believes in the potential of our regions, that optimism is also shared by the big Australian. Copper is clearly where BHP sees the market heading. And the good news for them and us was much realised in yesterday's critical announcements from BHP as they announced their financial results. They announced, as part of a comprehensive suite of commitments, that the Oak Dam project, not to be confused with the Olympic Dam project, the Oak Dam project in the far north is estimated to now contain 1.3 billion tonnes of copper and gold, which is more than 1.5 times what was originally forecast at that Oak Dam site. That future trend was also evident in the profit results accompanying the slideshow. That slideshow contained more than 5 times as many references to copper as to iron ore. They talked about copper yesterday in Mike Henry's speech 74 times. They talked about iron ore a paltry 14. And that is a big deal, because for our state, we happen to have for once the resource that the rest of the world desires and needs, because we are truly home to 70% of our nation's economic copper resource. But another indicator that we are reaching a pivot point for regional South Australia is that people are now voting with their feet. The Regional Australia Institute has been reporting an intriguing national trend recently in population movement. The most recent Regional Movers Index calculates that in the quarter to June this year, 11.2% of national internal migration flows represented people moving from the cities to the regions, compared with only 8.8% moving in the opposite direction. In other words, 25% more people are swapping the cities for the regions than vice versa. This is an unprecedented trend in modern Australia. In our state, we are seeing an increasing number of Adelaideans choosing to move to regional South Australia, whether it be in the west, the southeast, or in the mid-north or the Upper Spencer Gulf. That is a noteworthy development because Adelaide, traditionally, particularly post-World War II, has absorbed population growth with ease. Unlike the eastern states, where overflow from the crowded capitals have transformed existing regional centres into cities in their own right. In South Australia, we don't have the equivalent of a Newcastle or a Wollongong, a Geelong or a Ballarat. We don't have a Cairns, a Townsville or a Toowoomba. We don't even have a Launceston. But that's changing. That's not being derogatory about Launceston. Launceston. But that's changing and changing fast as our population now grows too. And as that occurs, our regions are set for change. And we need to start preparing for that now. Our regional towns are increasingly supporting well-paid, highly skilled jobs combined with a standard living that our capitals struggle to compete with. The more we can make that appealing balance of career and lifestyle possible for towns all around the state, the better. Because right now, there is a far more regional demand for labour than there is supply. And I believe that this unmet economic potential is more than just a policy failure. It is actually a social tragedy for people living in regional South Australia. If we want our regions to fulfil the state's economic aspirations, then human capital living in our regions is now mission critical. My government's country cabinets provide a very regular opportunity to meet and speak with people all across our state and actually hear from them what is happening on the ground. And the message I've got to say has been starkly consistent, coming through over and over. And that is that the biggest pressure points for those contemplating a future in regional South Australia is access to education, access to healthcare, and above all, housing accessibility. And this is where governments have a critical role to play. History tells us, as Gemma referred to in Paul's story, history tells us that people will move to where the services are and they will move away from where the services are not. It is just that simple. We know that many regional centres are struggling to find enough accommodation for the critical services that are required for people to live in those very places. Accommodation for the doctors, the nurses, the teachers and the police officers that are so vital to any community. That's why the state government has been relentless and aggressive in pursuing what are often unsexy and non-headline-grabbing policies, like our key regional worker housing program. It's a pilot program undertaken by the Office of Regional Housing, which we recently established, to build new rental properties specifically for the workers in those communities that are needed so much. The first of those 24 dwellings are under construction, with more to be followed throughout the course of next calendar year. In Port Augusta, opening up in September. In Mount Gambier, opening up in October, 2 months ahead of schedule. Politicians always highlight when that's true. And the pipeline throughout the course of next year contains properties in Kadina, in Renmark, in Mount Gambier, in Moonta Bay, in Ceduna. And that is just a pilot program designed for much more growth than that. Thus far, the results have been promising. We also recognise that families contemplating a move to the regions need to feel confident, as Mia outlined, that their kids still have access to the sort of high-quality education and skills training that will prepare them for jobs of the future. To that end, we are working to ensure that regional schools have the teachers needed to serve a growing population and that the acquisition of gold standard vocational training is available for people without having to move to Adelaide or another location. Recently, we made the country teacher allowance loading ongoing and permanent. The madness of a temporary allowance that incentivises people to move to regional South Australia, then to conclude only for them to move back, has now ended. While we also invest in our technical colleges in regional South Australia. Port Augusta's new technical college will open to students next year, and the Mount Gambier Technical College is taking enrolments as we speak. Not only does that make study more accessible, it helps skilled workers stay in regional communities that they call home. We're also making the biggest ever investment in health than we've ever seen before in the state's history, and regional South Australia is no exception. That means funding local health networks with more clinicians, more doctors, more nurses, more allied health workers. It means supporting the Riverland Academy of Clinical Excellence to bring more doctors to train, work and actually live in the local area. We've got more AMBO stations in Strathalbyn, Burwood, Port Augusta, Mount Barker, Whyalla and Two Wells. We've got the biggest upgrades in our regional hospitals in a comprehensive program that we've seen in probably 30 years. Whyalla, the Mount, Naracoorte, Gawler, Mount Barker, massively overdue upgrade at Port Augusta that hasn't seen any love for 20 years. We're partnering with the RFDS, an outstanding Australian institution, one of the biggest new partnerships that we have pursued with them in decades. We're working with the Commonwealth on the single employer model for GP training, without going into too much detail, that is completely orientated to make sure that doctors or GPs who choose to live in regional South Australia are not put at a financial disadvantage to those that decide to call Adelaide home. The headline is that my government is determined to make use of every last tool to see and help regional South Australia enjoy not just a better standard of living, but for once a standard of living that is equitable to those people that live in our major metropolitan city. That in turn can lead to greater prosperity, opportunity and reward for those who have as much ambition as the state writ large. And we are doing this not just because it makes economic sense, which of course it does, or because it is a responsible thing to do, which of course it is, but also because it is fundamental to who we are as South Australians. Our state is as diverse as our country, but no matter where we live or where we came from, there is one thing that we all share, and that is somewhere within our lineage is a courage of and history of resilience. It doesn't really matter whether your surname appeared on the passenger list of the Buffalo, or if your family's South Australian story began in a migrant hostel or a refugee camp, or even if you can trace your family lineage through 50,000 years or more on this continent. If you're here today, it's because you represent a history shaped by strength, sweat, and at some point, a degree of struggle. That's true regardless whether your history spans months or millennia. It's part of our identity. It is in our cultural DNA. It is what has made our nation's prosperity the envy of the world, but has also meant we've internalised a promise to the next generation that they will enjoy a greater standard of living than the one before. But we do find ourselves at a moment in history where that promise is harder than ever to fulfil. When the things that were once thought to lead to prosperity and security in Australia feel like they are no longer guaranteed. Access to a lifelong career, the stability of home ownership. And that risks a deepening of despair that is not limited to a particular generation or tax bracket or even to a particular postcode. It affects every single one of us. No young person wants to feel that the ladder of opportunity has been pulled up before they can even get on the bottom rung. No parent wants to feel that they are failing their children. And none of us wants to see the pillars of our community slowly disappear. A bank closure here, a footy team folding there. A beloved cafe on a main drag replaced with an empty storefront. But an economic renaissance in our regions is no longer a forlorn hope. It can be a reality, but only through a full court press from everyone. Government, industry, communities alike can realise this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for South Australia and enhance the incredible potential for our state from the far north to the EP, to the Nullarbor, to the Limestone Coast. South Australia's regions have always been the powerhouse of our state, and their future is as boundless today as they were 200 years ago. Thank you very much.